Well, hi, Mom. How are you today?
Well, Mary, I'm just fine. How are you?
Isn't this a beautiful day?
This is the day the Lord hath made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it.
Amen. It's a beautiful sunny day and only the second day of a brand new year.
That's right.
And we have lots of things to look forward to in 1988, don't we?
We sure do.
Yes, it's been a good year last year. You went through a lot, but you're doing pretty good right now.
I would say so. Thanks to the Lord.
Well, let's just talk about, we want to put down on tape some of the things that out of your past, about your life. I know you've told your children stories about your childhood and your background many, many times, and we know lots of them, but sometimes they get lost over time, and we thought if we put them on tape, it might be a good way for your great-grandchildren and their children to remember
Be fine.
their background. So let's start with where you were born.
I was born in Danville, Pennsylvania, February the 10th, 1905.
And Danville is that a large town, a large city?
I think there was about maybe 7,000 to 8,000 people at the time.
And what kind of industry did it have?
Well, it had a lot of industry. It had foundries, it had 4 silk mills, it had puddling mills, it had a pants factory. Oh goodness, I can't think of everything, but an state hospital.
I know they had a state hospital. I remember you speaking
the Geisner, I was about 12 when the Geisner was built.
Yeah.
And that is a real good hospital.
And that's not the state hospital.
No.
That's
no.
a regular hospital.
Oh yes, they come from all over to that.
Mm-hmm. And you lived in, what part of the town did you live in?
Sidler Hill.
It was called Sidler Hill?
Yes.
That means it was a hilly section of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And was it the highest point in the city, or were there other high points?
No, there was others, but we were really high.
You were really high.
You could see the trains coming around the mountain, and I mean that.
Yeah.
We stand there and watch them, you know.
And they ran very often in those days, so you probably saw them
yes.
often.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you got a good view of the whole city from there, probably.
Yes, we did.
You lived on a house halfway up the hill, at the foot of the hill, where it must be at the top of the hill.
There was 2 houses behind, just 2 beyond us. So we were about, let's see, there was 1, 2, only 4 on our side of the street.
4 houses.
And about 5 on the other.
5 houses on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And were they quite close together, or did you have a lot of room in between them?
No, there was lots of spaces between.
Big lots.
Big lots, yes.
How big was the house?
3 bedroom, 3 rooms downstairs, and then it had a nice long hall going through it upstairs.
Was it on a foundation?
Oh yes, we had the back was 3 stories and the front was 2. We lived in the basement in the summer.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, it was cooler to just to eat cook and eat down there.
Oh, you had a kitchen down there?
Yeah.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
Sort of like you could go out in the backyard and have a picnic right there off your kitchen if you wanted to.
That's right.
Did you ever have picnics out there in those days?
No, not too much.
You didn't?
No. I don't think they could afford them, to be honest about it. You was lucky enough to get your meals, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a look at a couple of the pictures of Sidler Hill and of the house you lived in.
This is my home where I was born, and this was my bedroom, and this is my mother's bedroom, and this was our living room, and this was our kitchen. This is my mother, and this is my brother Ray, my brother Cliff, my daughter Mary, myself, and my daughter Mildred. Now we lived down here in the summer. We lived down here in the basement. This was just the cellar where the furnace and coal was, but our outhouse was way down here in the yard. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is my Aunt Sade's house, and it's across the street from us. And this is my mother, and this is myself, and this was their front door, and this was their window. You know, just a dirt road between us. That's it.
Did you have indoor plumbing, a bathroom inside?
You kidding? No, my poor dad used to have to take us down there sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and wait for us outside of that, John. Isn't that awful?
Your father always took you at night if you had to
And
go?
he'd stand outside till we went.
Well, you had a good father to do that,
He
even in
sure
the
did.
wintertime?
Yes,
Oh,
no matter
my.
what.
And that was down in the backyard a ways too, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, yes.
I remember visiting there.
All downhill, yeah.
Having to go down there.
Remember how the hill sloped? You
Uh-huh.
know? Yeah.
Your mother lived until she was 80,
Almost 87.
87, and did she have indoor plumbing later in life?
Never a toilet, Mary. No, just water. They got
Just water?
Water and electricity they got.
But she never had a bathroom put in.
No.
She hiked that
Yes,
hill all
she
those
did.
years?
Yes,
My
she
goodness.
did.
She was a sturdy lady, wasn't
Yeah.
she?
Mhm.
Well, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, there was 12 of the family. 7 boys and 5 girls. 7 boys and 5 girls, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see. Do you think you could go down through their names just quickly?
Well,
Starting with the first,
The oldest was Cliff. Then
Cliff.
come Bill. Then come May. Then come Ray. Then come Bob. Then come Harry. Then it was me. And then after me it was Paulus. And then Walter. And then Martha. And then Dorothy.
Dorothy was the
Is
last
that
one.
12?
I don't know, I didn't count. We'll hope you didn't leave anybody out. Where did you go to school?
They had just a one-room schoolhouse there. One up to 8th grade. One teacher, 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there a high school in the area?
No, you had to go way up in near the state hospital to high school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did any of you go to high school?
I think I think Dorothy is the only one ever went. Paulus did, yes. But then he took a 4 years college course in 2, and he got sick and he died.
Paulus died a
He
young
was
man.
teaching high school when he was only 21.
Uh-huh. But he died of some flu or something?
Well,
when
he got something in the throat. I can't remember the name of it right now. And he didn't.
And he was teaching at high school level when he died?
He was in high school teaching at the age of 21 years old.
Uh-huh. And where was he teaching, in Danville?
No, it was down Philadelphia way.
Down towards
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, just beyond there a little bit.
And then, did any of your other brothers and sisters die in childhood, or did they all
One
live to
little
be
brother
adult?
died at 14 months old.
Who was that?
Walter.
Walter.
Hmm.
So Walter died as a child,
Mhm.
and Paulus died as a young man.
There was 3 deaths in 3 years in our home.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Who was the third one?
Well, there was Walter and my father and Paulus.
Your father died while some of you were still children,
Yes, Dorothy and them was quite small.
but after you were away from home.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Do you remember your grandparents?
My grandmother.
Your grandmother
Yeah,
on which
because-
side?
My mother was born in Texas, so her father left them out there, and her grandfather came out by horse and buggy and brought them in. And she was only 3 years old, but her mother lived with us quite frequent, so I well remember my grandmother.
And what was her name?
Arletta
Arletta, what was her last name?
Commons.
Commons.
Hmm.
And so she lived with you some of the time
In our home, yeah.
in your home.
Hmm.
And how about your father's family?
No, I never. My grandmother died when I was born, my father's mother, and I don't remember any of them, just his brothers.
Your father have any other brothers and sisters that lived around there?
Yes, Uncle Sam lived next door to us, and Uncle Jake lived downtown.
They were both Foxes.
Mm-hmm.
F-A-U-X, pronounced Fox.
Yeah, but I think it's a French name.
It's a
though.
French
Yeah.
name, yes, I'm sure it is.
They pronounce it Fox.
How about did your mother have sisters or brothers?
Oh, my mother had a brother, but they never. I think he came to my grandmother's funeral, but him I don't quite remember. But she had a sister. There
What
was 3.
What was her sister's name?
Sally.
Sally?
Yeah, Aunt Sally.
Aunt Sally.
They lived in Pottsville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
not too far from Danville, is it?
No, just short run.
And how about your aunts and uncles? Did you have aunts and uncles around there on either side of the family? You had
Just them two
Uncle
uncles.
Sam.
Yeah,
And how about
and Uncle Jake.
how about your grandmother Commons? Did she have sisters around?
Aunt Sade, yes, was her sister. She lived across the street.
Aunt Sade was a
Aunt-
sister to your mother's
Yeah.
mother.
Aunt Lizzie, she jumped off a little sofa at the age of 7, so she was crippled. She went with a crutch.
And she was a sister
Aunt-
also to your grandmother?
Aunt Mays and Aunt Mays and Aunt Lizzie were twins.
Okay.
And
And they were both sisters to your grandmother.
mhm.
And Aunt Sade was a sister to your grandmother.
Mhm.
I've heard you talk about Aunt Sade.
Well, she's the one that made all that ointment, for when anybody got burnt, and she powwowed and
She was like a country folk doctor,
well, yes,
sort of.
no matter who got sick, they run to her.
You
I
didn't
don't
have
think-
doctors right handy there, so oftentimes you wouldn't.
You'd have to go all the way downtown, a mile downtown to get a doctor. Then he'd have to hitch his horse up if it was coming to the home, and he'd have to wait the other end of town, the livery stable, and hitch the horse up, and then come all the way up. So he'd bring you back, like that.
So if somebody had just a burn or something like that, they would run to Aunt Sade
Yeah.
and she would doctor them. Did
Mhm.
it ever work? Was she good?
Like a charm, I'll tell you.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
And she really powwowed over them?
Yes, she
said,
did.
What is that? She said words or something over
She
them?
never would tell what they say, but she, now, I spilled a pan of hot fudge over a kid's head.
Oh my goodness.
My Aunt Minnie, that's Uncle Sam's wife, she had a big family, and they were very poor. And I was good in the kitchen, even at the age of 10, 12, I could do things. And so she was making, her mother worked at the 5 and 10, and they gave her the stale candies. So she would melt the fudge, and then she would redo it. So we were all over there one Sunday night, and she said, Mildred, would you take that fudge off? The baby had to be nursed. So she hollered, the kids were all around a round table, and she hollered everybody out. And the cutest little fattest one of the bunch stayed under the table. So she gave me an okay to bring the fudge over, but just as she did, she hollered, is everybody out? And he came out from under that table and bumped that pan.
Oh dear.
It was as close, the stove was as close to the table as that refrigerator is. And that fudge run down over half of his head. And
Well, she moved very quickly to do something about that.
if it had
Did
been
they take him to Aunt
no,
Sade?
do you know what they did?
What?
They called Aunt Sade, and they called Mr. Ackley. He powwowed, and they put him around the table leg, and they done said things. And then my father and Uncle Sam had to carry that boy. Now, Mary, you know where the Little Woods is, 3 streets down,
Yes.
and up the hill to the Geisner. Well, they carried that boy all that distance over to that hospital. And after you get up on Red's Hill there, you've got a long way to go at the hospital.
Well, did he survive?
Yes.
He did survive.
I saw him years later. Oh, he was a grown man. And I saw him downtown. Oh, he had awful welts on the side of his face.
Yes. that's too bad.
I don't know anything about after that.
But Aunt Sade was your doctor then,
Yeah.
right in Sidler Hill when
Yeah.
you needed something.
That's right.
Well, let's look at some family pictures now of some of these people we've been talking about.
All right, we're gonna,
This is my mother, and this is my sister Catherine. She was the 8th child. And this is my nephew, my sister May's boy. He's kind of cutting up there a little bit. And I think that's just a picture of the little old garage. This is kind of a family group. That old black house my Aunt Minnie lived in, my Uncle Sam. This is my brother Bob, and this is my dad, and this is my brother Cliff, and this is he wasn't my husband then, but we got married after that. That's Luther.
What's that barn in the background?
That's the old black house. Yes. There's the old wagon. See it sitting there? Now this is my mother, and this is my sister-in-law, Catherine. And we went way up this hill here to get water to drink, way up there
what are they sitting
in
in?
the woods. The wagon,
Oh,
my uncle's wagon.
that's your uncle's wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. This is the Criminal Insane Hospital at Waymart. And this is my brother Harry. He was the sixth one and in line, and he worked at this hospital, and he lives in Waymart.
He had Dorothy Ruth was his daughter.
Dorothy Ruth was his daughter, yes. His wife is dead. His first wife died. Now, this here is my brother Paulus, and he died. And this is my sister Dorothy. And
She's the youngest.
yeah, she's the youngest girl in the family, yes.
And what number was Paulus?
Well, let's see. You got me.
Before Walter.
Yes, just before Walter, yes. I was 7 and Paul, I was the 7th. Then
He was a school
Catherine.
teacher.
7, 8, 9, 9. Yeah, he taught high school. Now, this is my brother Cliff, and this is Luther, my husband, and this is my Aunt Sade's house. Now, they always went hunting way up there in that woods, and way over in that corner was a spring where we went for water. Cliff, my brother Bill called out one day. What? Standing in front of my Aunt Sade's house, and this is my brother Paulus when he was young. He's named after the doctor in our town. And this was myself here, and that was a blue organdy dress. We thought we wore something in that out. That had a great big sash.
Pretty.
Yes, it did. It was pretty. This is my sister Dorothy. She's a nurse. She graduated from nurses training, and she married her high school teacher. I don't remember where this is. That is not married. That is not that great for Orchard.
She married Ray Jamison?
Yeah, the high school teacher.
And one of her sons is a doctor now,
That's right. That's right. And one works for the power plant in Pennsylvania, and the daughter's a school teacher. Now this is Aunt Sade's house again, but this is my sister Catherine and Mary McCafferty. Her home was over here. Now we went up this road and around that bend to get down to the other street, but we went up through this woods to get our water. Anything else?
What'd you have to get water for? Did
The
you
well
have a
went dry every summer. Our well went dry every
Is that
summer.
over there?
Well, this is Uncle Sam's house here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
He
where
was mentioned before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he's been there before. Aunt Minnie and Uncle Sam, yeah. Now, this is the type of swimsuits they wore in our days. And look at those men. They're well covered. And look at that woman. She's even hiding her, she got her arms across her so she don't show her bosom. Oh, I'll tell you, that's something. I think that's Frank Shoup. Yeah.
Well, you probably do have that lawn. Because we,
Oh,
you
I'd
know,
rather find it.
did your father work?
The stove works in Danville. That was about 3 miles from home.
And the stove works made stoves, of course.
Yes, and he
Yeah.
was a nickel plater and a polisher.
A nickel plater. Now that was these big old coal stoves like
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
probably
that's
had in
right.
your kitchen at home.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And did any of the other family work there also?
No.
None of your brothers or sisters
No,
worked
they
there?
worked in the silk mill and the puddling mills.
Well, what's puddling now? Is that iron?
Well, that's iron. It's making iron. And that's where I had to carry those pails too.
You had to carry their lunches down
Yeah,
there
yeah.
to them?
Cooked meals.
Well, cook meals?
That's right. My mother got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and 4:30 and cooked these meals. And there had to be enough. They worked 12-hour shifts, so they went to work at 3 and worked till 3. So then she would get up and cook the meals, and she'd have to send enough for 2 meals for each one of them. And we carried those pails, and we had to wait till they could come out. They couldn't come out till that iron was ready. And then they would come out and take the pails. And then the same was repeated at supper time the night, because when they come home at 3, 2 other ones went to work, and then we had to carry their suppers the same way.
My goodness, did you take turns doing that?
Well, Harry, no, each one, until they could go to work, each one would do it. Bob did it till he went to work, then Harry, and then when Harry went to work, I had to do it.
And that meant even sometimes you were standing in very cold, wet weather down
yes,
there waiting for them to come
yes,
out to get
right
this.
along the creek, too. Mhm.
Well, your mother spent a lot of time over the cook stove then,
Oh, I
didn't
guess
she?
my mother did, and she was a good cook, too. Plain but good.
And she also cooked, she cooked big meals early in the morning and then cooked big meals again at dinner time.
4 o'clock in the morning, she only cooked the meals for the boys. Then we got up and we had a regular breakfast.
Yes.
But these meals had to be down there, so she had to get up and make them early.
And then you had a big supper at night.
Yeah. Mhm.
And there was some of that.
We
would be
never
sent.
done any snacking. She bought a lot of apples for winter and put them away, and then we would have an apple in the evening. But you never snacked in our house.
Well, did your mother bake her own bread?
I guess she did. 2 25-pound sacks. So we could be about a quart of flour left in each one, and she mixed one of them all by herself at one time.
I bet it was good too. Huh?
I guess it was.
I can remember Grandma's cooking. She was a very good cook. I recall that.
The one doctor used to come up just to look at the bread. She said she often would like to give him a loaf, but she didn't want to create trouble in the family. And then donut day, Dr. Henselwood came up, but he'd always get in the donuts, so.
You'd always get some donuts.
Oh yeah, Mom made good donuts.
So you had lots of visits from the doctors, whether you needed them or not.
That's right, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Well, and how about the washing? How did your mother wash? Did she have a washing machine?
They would carry water from the neighbors, and then they put it in a boiler down this kitchen in the wintertime. See, we didn't live down there. And then it was a hand washer. One kid would stay out of school and run it. And then everything had to go on, but the sheets and towels had to go on the washboard first. She never would put dirty clothes in her washer. Even the overhauls had to be done on the washboard first. And
She had nice white washes then, huh?
oh, I guess she did, boy. Then that water was emptied, and the sheets went back in, and then another boiler full of hot water with a half a cake of Arctic and soap was poured on them. Then you run them 10 minutes and through one rinse. And that was a bluing rinse. And Mary, you never saw any soap on top. You know how today how it'll gather on rinse water? You never saw any soap. That rinse water was as clear when you was through as when she started.
Well, did your family have a car? How did you get around?
Walked.
You walked everywhere.
Yeah, nobody owned a car. My mother walked to town every Saturday, her and my father, and they would walk down to town and go to the grocery store. We had one grocery store where we bought our regular order, and they would go and order it, and they would deliver it in horse and buggy. Yeah, they had to walk. My father walked that 3 miles to work, and he walked the railroad tracks because it was easier than it was to go the streets. And
how about you children? You walked to school? How long a walk was it to school?
well, it was just like the end of a lot. It was just like going from here down to that yellow house to school.
The school was that close?
Yeah,
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah, but the high school was way up Sadesburg, so that was way uptown.
Why do you think any of you didn't go to high school, or more of you didn't go to high school?
Well, I quit at 14 just in order to go to work, and I only made 9 cents an hour, 9 hours a day. But see, we handed our pays over to my mother because it took it to operate the home. And when the factories were shut down or something else was shut, there was 4 silk mills, so May worked in one, I worked in one, Harry and Bob. But sometimes it would get laid, certain parts would get laid off. And I went to work for 9 cents an hour. And she bought me a hat with my first pay, $8 and something.
And you worked in the silk mill then?
Mhm.
And some of the girls would go to work in the silk mills and the boys in the iron plant.
Yeah, that's right.
And what did you do in the silk mill?
Well, I started at reeling, and then I went to winding and 5D'ing. I never was on twisters or spinners.
These are all parts of making the silk, the fabric. Were you making silk or some other fabric?
No. These were just the raw silk came in and went through the different processes. And then it was went to to the silk mills where they dyed it, and then they made material.
And it wouldn't be all silk, it might be other kinds of material
Oh
too.
no, it was all silk.
All silk?
Oh yeah.
Well, then when they called it a silk mill, they really meant it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, who did the chores around the house besides your mother? Did you children have chores you had to do too?
Everybody had a chore before you went to school, and you never saw a neater home in your life than our home was. You never let anything lay around. My mother wouldn't permit it.
I remember a very large kitchen.
Yeah, that's right.
and a very overstuffed horsehair stuffed furniture living room, which probably nobody ever sat in.
Well, no, we had that little sitting room off the kitchen, which should have been a dining
Yes,
room.
I remember that.
We used to sit in there. But remember, Mary, we had nothing but a radio, but a phonograph to play. And there was nothing else. We had no radios or anything.
Did you play games at all?
Not to amount to anything.
You just, what did you do with your spare time when you wanted to play?
Just went out to neighbors and hung around playing neighbors' houses.
Played in the yard or you probably played games
We
with
used to like to
them?
go over to well, I used to like to go over to Uncle Sam's and Aunt Minnie's where I burnt the kids, you know, because I don't know, there was just something about it that they were poor and they didn't have carpets on the floor even, and we kind of liked them.
You were kind of like that atmosphere
Yeah.
where you didn't have to be so fussy about things.
Then I went to Walker's a lot, my girlfriend down the street, and her father was the kind of a guy that, oh, he'd play games when he'd have parties, and he'd get right in the games and play spin the pie pan and post office, and he was one of the biggest ones there, you know. He loved to get in the side rooms and kiss the young kids, you know. I was only probably 8 or 10 years old, but you'd think he was one of us, you know. He was a nice guy.
Oh.
His mother, his wife used to say, "Oh, you old fool, you, why don't you cut it," you know.
Well, it sounds like you had a little fun along the way then.
Yeah, then of course, when Cliff got married, he moved into his friend's house. His friend had died, and he moved in there. So there was another place we'd go to. But by this time now, I was working in the silk mill, you know.
I suppose mealtime was quite a big affair at your house. Did you have big breakfasts in the morning?
Sunday morning's always a cooked breakfast, but we had our own chickens and everything, so we could have eggs or toast. You'd made the toast on the coal fire we had a regular toaster. We'd take the lid off the stove, and the coals were hot, and it would toast your bread. And sometimes we just had coffee and bread. The coffee was made at 4 in the morning, Mary. So can you imagine how strong it was? It was something, I'll tell you, but we always drank a little of it.
It got you kick-started in the morning anyway, that strong coffee.
Yeah.
And you'd have homemade bread toasted for
Oh,
breakfast.
yes. Never had bought bread. No way, no way.
And your mother probably made all her own cookies and cakes, and I know she was a good cook.
Yeah, she did. She made hartshorn cookies.
Hartshorn cookies?
Yeah.
I never heard
I
of
had to
those.
go to the drugstore and buy 5 cents worth of hartshorn.
What is that, a
It looked
flavoring?
it looked like baking soda. And they would sell you 5 or 10 cents worth. And then she would make great big cookies, you know, about like this, and a nice big sticky raisin in them.
Oh, they sound delicious.
Maybe about that thick. They were good. The hartshorn was the flavoring, Mary.
And then she'd put them down in a crock, I suppose, or something to keep them all a week, because she probably didn't bake every day.
Do you know that all that bread was taken down the cellar and not wrapped in anything and put in just in a cupboard?
Really?
And you know that bread never dried out, Mary. That bread, she baked Tuesdays and Fridays, these 12 loaves of bread. And do you know that every bit of that bread was just as tender as butter?
Isn't that marvelous? Well, the cupboard must have protected it in some way. And
It was in
the
the
moist-
cellar.
The humidity
It
of
was
the
in the
basement
cellar.
would keep
It was in the
moist.
cellar that was moist, yeah.
And what did you do on Saturdays and Sundays?
Not too much. We get our house all cleaned up. You know, my mother was very fussy. We had to scrub the door sills with a brush. Oh, that was a must. The door sills had to be scrubbed with a brush. And so my mother was very fussy about it.
So you did a lot of work on Saturdays, not on Sundays, I suppose.
No.
Were you allowed to work on Sundays?
We never did have to work on Sunday to make our beds. That's
Just
all.
make your bed.
And of
Did you
course,
all go to church on Sunday?
not until we got pretty big. I was about 12 when I got baptized.
You were.
And I went alone.
You went alone?
One at night, when I walked that 3 miles, went alone, and was baptized and come home with a wet hand. It was in the fall of the year, I think along October, November.
Something you wanted to do yourself, that you
Yeah.
felt you
Yeah.
wanted. And what church did you go to?
The Baptist.
The Baptist church?
Mhm.
Well, let's go on to what your summers and winters were like down there. Of course, the weather was probably balmy in the summertime. It's a little further south than Binghamton, so you probably had nice summers.
Oh yeah, beautiful summer. But we went out, as kids, we went out there and played in that big little field where I told you.
Did you have a garden?
Oh, yes, my father had a beautiful garden.
And I know one of your brothers was a fisherman.
Cliff.
Did he fish for a living?
No. He
Well, he
fished and gave it
sold a
away.
lot of stuff
No.
he caught, didn't he?
After he went housekeeping down at where his pal died and he bought that house.
That's where Aunt Catherine lived,
yes,
right down the street.
there was a cistern behind the house. And they piped it in and they put little pools of water down there. And he brought frogs in. And the restaurants would come up and buy the fresh frogs.
I mean, he had a pond in his basement?
Yeah.
And he
they-
kept live frogs in
Yeah,
there in the restaurants?
But he made nets, Mary. You wouldn't believe the size of these nets that he went out in the creek and put in. He brought eels in he set outlines for eels. And he brought eels in by the tubs. Everybody came to our house to get their fish free.
Free? He didn't sell it then, he just gave it away?
No.
And he made his own nets, that's interesting.
Oh, you ought to see him. I can see nets in that kitchen upstairs when we lived in the basement in the summer, you know. Why, some of those nets were this big around with hoops in them, you know. And he had a shuttle, and it looked like that crocheting we do where you loosen the stitch, you know.
Yeah, it was
That was
probably
that.
like macrame, maybe.
Well, it's
That they
even
make.
different than that, yeah. But he would go out and set those, and then he'd bring all these fish in. Oh, we had everything. Catfish, we had eels, we had everything you could think of.
And ate it all.
Well, we had a lot of fish.
Yeah,
I think
big
that's why I
family,
don't care
so
for
a
fish
lot of
today.
food. Uh-huh.
I think that's why I don't
Yeah.
care for fish today.
Well, what were your winters like? Did you have a lot of snow?
Yes, we did.
And how about boots? Did you have nice warm clothes and boots to
We
wear?
had a nice warm coat, we had a nice warm hat. But I don't remember ever owning a pair of gloves. I really don't
And you
remember.
don't like to wear gloves this day, do
That's
you?
right, that's right.
You're so used to that, you've never gotten into wearing gloves. And no boots, so you oftentimes had wet feet, I suppose.
No, we put stockings over our shoes and then big black heavy stockings we wore. And then we put our rubbers over that. The rubbers were about big enough.
Oh, you had rubbers.
Yeah, over your shoes.
And
But
that
never
kind of
boots
protect
or
your
anything.
shoes,
No leggings,
okay.
no nothing, no.
I see. And then, what were your Christmases at home like?
They were wonderful. We got a doll, a plate of candy. We got a kitchen plate, your table like you eat on. And that had a popcorn ball and an apple and an orange and some hard candy, Christmas candy. And usually I traded my orange for an apple because I didn't care for oranges. And one of the other kids did. I can't remember who took it, but one did. But then we had a big Christmas tree and my uncle made this big platform. And then he would put tinsel, crisscross tinsel, so that you never could get to anything on the platform. There was Christmas scenes of all kind there. But we did have regular balls and popcorn, and we would cut paper and make those ring things, you know.
And Santa Claus came, did he?
Oh, yeah. And we were big kids when we even believed in Santa Claus. Oh, yeah, I can see us getting behind my mother's skirt and peeking out at him, you know, we were little. Oh, yeah, Christmas was really something in those days. Today, they don't take it. I don't think we really took it for what it meant. I don't believe we
In
did.
those days, it was more Santa Claus.
I don't believe we really took it for what it really was meant to be. Because I can remember it was a long, long time before, you know, we connected Jesus with Christmas.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's
It was more or
another-
less, you didn't get much, but you was pleased with what you got. And so therefore you enjoyed it.
You know, you worked before you were married at the silk mill, and
Yeah.
some of your sisters did too.
Yeah.
Did you have any childhood romances?
Not to mount anything.
Do you remember any boyfriends, boys you liked when you were little?
No. What I mean is you went to school and everybody mixed with everybody. No, really, we didn't marry.
You didn't like a certain boy,
No.
ever?
No.
So was Dad your first boyfriend?
No, I had been out with a few of them, but not to amount to anything.
And how did you meet your husband?
He came up to Silver Hill to a dance to meet me.
You had dances where? At the fire hall?
Yeah.
The firehouse?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he came up there specifically to meet you?
Yeah.
He'd heard about you?
He had to
somewhere?
work. Well, Johnny Ackley brought him up. Johnny Ackley wanted me to go with him. That's Beatrice's brother, and I didn't care for Johnny. And so he said to Luther, I'll take you up to meet a girl that's a real nice girl. And he said, I want you to meet her. So, Mom and my dad, we all went to these dances, She took us and we sat on benches and watched the others dance. Well, when Luther came in, John brought him right over and I met him. But we only lived a stone's throw from the dance hall. So he took my cousin home that night. He didn't take me home, he took my cousin. But he had to work till 8:30, so one day he met Mary McCafferty downtown. He said, tell Mildred to come down and meet me at the bank corner. Everybody got their dates at the bank corner. So I went down, and he had to work till 8:30, and he had to be in at 10 o'clock because he was in nurse's training.
He was in nurse's training at the
2 years.
at the guys or at the state hospital.
Yeah. And he had 2 years training there. And so when he would, he had a board outside of his window that he could go up and crawl in his window if he was late getting in.
Well, then you met him at a dance.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it developed into a romance because you ended up marrying him. Now, was he a Danville resident?
No, from Liverpool.
From Liverpool?
7 Stars, back in that neck of the woods, back of Liverpool.
What is it, 7 Stars?
I can't remember whether a little town called 7 Stars. And I think he lived this side of that.
And he was born there at that
Yeah.
little town.
I don't
outside
know
of
where
Liverpool.
Luther was born, whether he was born there or not. This big farmhouse that the grandfather had.
Yeah.
Well, when they got married, they lived there. The boy stayed on to run the farm because the grandfather was a fertilizer agent.
Uh-huh.
And so I think Luther was born there. I don't know.
And he lived on the farm where his father was raised.
His father died there too.
And his father died young,
He
didn't
had
he?
appendicitis, yes.
Died at the age of what?
Oh, I think-
24?
Yeah, and he died, I think it was in 1906 he died.
His father's name was Foster.
Yes,
You named your first son after him.
that's right.
And so his mother was widowed young. How many children did she have
She had just the 2 boys and Ida at the time.
when
But-
she was widowed?
Mhm.
So he was raised on this big farmhouse by his grandfather, probably.
By the grandmother, the grandfather.
The
traveled.
grandmother?
And the mothers lived there. They'd done the housework and the cleaning. But then the uncles run the farm. Mary, back in the 1800s, they had a reservoir, they had steam heat, and they had a bathroom in this house.
They did.
Way
They
out.
had indoor plumbing?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
My
Beautiful.
goodness.
That second floor never was lived in. It was a gorgeous place. But the house was 3 stories in the back and 2 in the front. So it was like our home.
So there was plenty of room.
They had 2 rooms down there, a kitchen and a dining room. And the men would sit out in the furnace room around the furnace at nights. But after Luther's mother finally left the farm, she brought the kids back there. But now Luther's bigger. And Russell, and she took Ida and went to work in Harrisburg. And she left Russell and Ida there on the farm. Russell and Luther on the farm. And I think at the age of 16, Luther just left the farm.
Yeah. What year was he born, Luther?
I was born in 5, he was born in 2.
He was born 1902.
Mhm.
And he was probably born in Liverpool or around there.
Yeah, back of Liverpool. Back of Liverpool.
And when did he die?
When did Luther die?
Yeah,
1969.
1969. And where was he interred?
At the Vestal Hill.
Vestal Hill
Mhm.
Cemetery.
Yeah.
And how many brothers and sisters did he have?
He had he had a half-brother, and he had 1 brother and a sister.
And his brother's name was
Russell,
Russell, and his sister's name,
Ida,
Ida. And then he had a half-brother,
Willard.
Willard, and a stepbrother,
Oh, the half-brother was, oh, you mean Glenn, yes. and
stepbrother was
she married Henry Faber, yes.
Because his mother married again a
Yes,
couple of
that's right,
times.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's stop and look at some pictures of some of the things that we've been talking about now with Luther.
This is my husband, long before I knew him, and I think he perhaps was about 17 years old, and I have no idea where it was taken. but sure looks like he shaved there, I'll tell you.
And he didn't wear the glasses when you met him
No,
either, did he?
no, he didn't have glasses. I don't know why he had them on there. I have no idea. Looks like he's got a striped shirt on, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
But those collars, they sent them to the laundry and had them done. Mary, they were stiff as boards. Now this is Uncle Milt. This is Luther's uncle, and Milt Arnold. And this is the house that Luther was raised in. I don't know what that is there, but he had a big family too, and his wife's name was Ellie.
I remember Aunt Ellie.
Yeah. I don't have any pictures of her, but he was an awful nice guy. Now this is Luther when he was a boy, I think, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years old, and there's his brother Russell. And I think that is a teacher at the school here.
Russell grew quite tall, didn't he?
Oh yes, Russell was a very big
Looks tall in
fellow.
that picture.
Yeah, he was a very big fellow.
He was about 6 feet tall.
He was a barber, yeah. He ended up being a barber, and he had quite a nice family, too. I think, now this is Mother Fawver, and this is Russell's daughter, and this is Luther's sister,
Ida.
Ida, yeah.
That's his mother.
This is his mother, yes.
Ida was a beautician, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
And she died in her early 50s.
She died in 1949. Yeah. She had high blood pressure. Very bad. Ate nothing but rice. Now this is my husband, and this is Willard Dressler. He's a half brother, and
Luther.
it was to Luther. And his mother was her second marriage. Willard had quite a nice family too. Mm-hmm. Now this picture here was taken right after I got married, and this is Luther's stepbrother, Glenn Fawver.
Who's the woman?
That's me.
Oh.
Told you it was me just after I
Oh,
got
she
married.
was so good looking, I couldn't
Well,
tell.
hey, it's time you pass that compliment on. And I don't know what that dog's name was. I don't even remember that. But that was taken, and Mother lived in that house there, Henry and her. We stayed there for a short time before I come up here. My mother-in-law, and this is her husband, her third marriage. That's Henry Fawver.
She was widowed each time, wasn't she?
Oh, yes,
She wasn't just discarding
yeah.
these husbands.
Oh, no. No, she run hotels and restaurants. Yeah, she was a hard-working woman and a good cook. Now, this is my mother-in-law and my husband, and I have no more idea of where that was taken, Mary.
This is after you were married.
After I was married, but I don't even remember that place there. Does it look familiar to you?
No.
I think it was taken in Sunbury. I think that was taken in Sunbury. Yeah. It's Luther and his mother. Now this picture was taken before we were married, and that's Luther, and that's myself, and that's the woods where all of them went hunting, and where we went for the water too. Yeah.
That's your blue organdy dress, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, that's that blue organdy dress. Mary, look at his hair there compared to that one, the big picture. See it?
Mm-hmm.
How it was up the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is Luther's new car, and this is his mother, and that's myself. But when we went riding, we had to put in the cold weather. This is another shot of the car, and that's Billy C. Schultz and his wife and Luther. And he traded that car in a Buick, and we had nothing but trouble after that with that car, with that Buick. We were not married here. This was the man I did marry, Luther, and that's myself, and that's Albert Deal, Ellie Deal. They were husband and wife, and North McClelland, and my brother Harry. I think North's wife Martha took that picture.
You don't have the right clothes on.
Well, no, we're all dressed up. The men are dressed as women, and we're dressed as men.
5, 6, 5 minutes.
Well, now we've had a connection there with Dad's family and a little more about him. So let's go back to you and Dad and when you were married.
I was married in 1923.
You were 18 years old?
Yeah, that's right.
And Dad was 3 years older, so
That's
that would
right.
make him 21.
Mhm.
And were you married at home?
No, I ran away to get married.
You ran away to get married? You eloped?
Yep. That we went by car, and we went to Maryland, was married in Maryland.
Maryland? What city in Maryland? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
And then, how long were you married?
Well, we were married in 23, Dad died in 69.
In 69?
Mm-hmm.
I know you celebrated your 45th wedding anniversary.
We never had a 50th.
You never
No.
made it to 50.
No.
And when did you move to Binghamton? I know you moved to Binghamton after you were married.
Sure.
Did you come right
afterwards.
to Binghamton?
I was married in March, and I came to Binghamton in June.
In June. And what brought you to Binghamton?
Well, we had a job down in New York, the hospital we could have went to in New Jersey, and at a state hospital there. But Luther heard they were needing help up here, so we came up here. And we got hired, and we had to stay in a hotel downtown overnight. But the next day we came right to work, and we lived in a little house. We lived in a little house at the state hospital, and
A little house, not in
Yeah,
not in one of the buildings, but in a little house?
no, there was no rooms in the other one. But just as soon as we could, we went to Woodlawn to live. That was a big apartment house. We
And
had one
so
room.
your first home in Binghamton was at the state hospital in one of the apartments for the employees,
Mm-hmm.
and you both worked there.
Yeah,
Um,
12-hour shifts.
How many of your children, let's see, how long were you married before you had your first child?
I was married in 23, and Foster was born in 24. He was born in September of 24.
And you were married
I was married in March of 23.
in March of 23, so,
I was nearly 20 when Foster was
yeah,
born.
okay. And was he born at home?
Yes.
Where did you live then? Did you still,
City limits at Annie Brock's.
you lived out in the city
Little
limits of
farm-
Binghamton, so
little
you'd
farmhouse,
moved off the state hospital by then?
Oh yes, I quit there.
You quit the-
Luther still worked there 12
Luther
hours,
worked
yeah.
and you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so you stayed home and you moved into a little place at the city limits of Binghamton
Yeah,
out
and,
toward Kirkwood.
Well, it was just the city limits right out here, yeah.
Yeah. And there were other people living in that
Oh
place?
yes, Uncle Harvey and his family and Annie Brock. We just called them Uncle and Aunt. And
I
then-
remember Uncle
Yeah.
Harvey and Annie Brown.
And then there was a little 5-room apartment. I had the second floor, and then the Ramseys lived there. They worked at the hospital too. They're the ones that told us about it, the other apartment.
One of the homes that was out there is still there, isn't it? The Miles home?
Oh, you're thinking of Angie Miles.
Well,
Angie
isn't that where
McLennan.
you lived then?
No,
Oh, that was later.
I came there at McLennan's afterwards.
Okay, that was after you
That's
moved out
when the
of
Miles is, but then, the Carol's took that over? The hamburger place, what was the first
Yeah,
one?
mhm,
Yeah, they tore
Yeah.
that big pillar post down.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So your second home was up near McLennan's?
I lived at Reddy McLennan's house, you were born there.
I was born there,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be about where their garage is now? Out the
No,
side of
the
McLennan's?
house is tore down. There
Well,
was a-
would that
there
have been
was-
where it was?
No, there was just the one greenhouse, and there was a little small greenhouse up back. And then this 5-room house was a barn at one time, but there was a house joined on, and McGuire's lived there. And then we lived in a little 5-room house, but they eventually tore that down too.
And how many of your children were born at home? Most of your children born at home?
Right up till the baby I lost, and then from there on, Bobby and the other two was born well, Shirley was born at home, but Bobby,
I remember Shirley's birth.
yeah, Bobby and the last two was born in the hospital.
And so you had how many children altogether?
11.
11? And they're all still living except the one that was born?
That's right. Born dead.
Stillbirth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And his name was, you named him
Well,
Paul?
Luther named me Paul. I didn't.
Luther did.
I didn't see that baby.
Uh-huh, okay. When did you move to your next home after you left McLennan's?
We went back out in the country to live. Out quite a ways, we had a new little home out there. But the wells went dry, and Bernie got very sick. Now, Louis was born there. And we moved back in then to Upper Mowaller. And we lived there just a month or two, then we moved to Dressler's. And then when they had to have the house, and after 2.5 years, Danny was getting married, then we moved up to 64 Mowaller.
So you lived in 3 places on Mowaller Street.
That's right.
And the last one was 64 Mowaller, which we all remember because we lived there
As
as children.
Yeah.
And until I lived there till I was 14 before you moved where? Where did you move when you left?
Here.
Here at this house, at 300 Robinson
That's
Street.
right.
And you've lived here ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Luther worked at the state hospital. Now, was
As a
he a nurse?
barber.
He was trained for nursing.
Well,
What happened there?
when we first went there, he worked on the hospital ward. And he worked also in a TB place. And then he would help the barbers barber. The barbering runs in the Arnold family. So he became a barber. And then when there was a vacancy, he took the barber job.
Well, there's always been a connection between surgery and barbering, so maybe the connection is there. He decided he didn't want to be a doctor, he wanted to be a barber.
Yeah.
So he became a barber at the state
That's right.
hospital. And how long did he work up there? Do you remember how many years he had when he
43,
retired?
About 43.
And he was a barber most of that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he barbered at home too, didn't he? I
Oh,
remember
yes.
a barber shop in our home.
Oh, yes, we always had a barber shop from
And he barbered
1933 on.
evenings.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
And it was always natural for us to have people in our home because that barber shop was in the front of the house and we were used to having people come in and out.
Yep, that's right.
We know you worked at the silk mill in Danville, and then you said you worked at the state hospital till
Here.
Foster, till you got pregnant with Foster, and then you left and you went back to the state hospital, didn't you?
1942 when we had to buy a house, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and then
Then
you
I got
decided you
pregnant
had to
for
go back to
Jimmy.
work to help pay for the house.
Then I got pregnant for Jimmy, and then when I went back to the state hospital after Jimmy was born, he was 3 months old, then I had to go on the wards because they gave an older man my cooking job.
You were cooking at the state hospital previous to that.
Yeah.
And then you went on the wards to work and became an attendant.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you retire?
I retired in 1960.
And you retired to retire, did you, or what did you do?
I had the bakery going. I didn't retire, Mary. I had the bakery going. Don't you remember?
Yes, I remember well.
The pie bakery first, and then we ended up getting cakes and introduced the red velvet to Binghamton here, and it's gone quite a ways.
I know, it was, and you worked at that for, where did you have your bakery?
Well, first I baked here in the kitchen. Then eventually...
Got too big for that.
Well,
right?
everybody sat around here, you know, and they sat with their feet out like this, and I was crawling over them and reaching into cupboards to get things. And I said to Harvey McFall, go on down and make me a bakery. So Harvey went down, and Bob and him, I guess, both got in on that, and they got that thing going for me.
So you had your bakery in the basement then? And I can remember I helped you for a few years with the pie
Yeah.
bakery, and
You and Bob made
even
the
Bob got
crumbs.
in on it. We used to make crumbs by
That's
the
right.
tubs full.
50
I think we
pound
could
cans.
make it in our sleep.
Yes, you could. Remember the first batch Bob made? He squeezed the shortening so
Yes,
that
uh-huh.
you didn't have to put no water in it.
He didn't have that gentle touch.
No, I can well remember, but he learned.
That's right, he learned. He's pretty good at it.
Do you know that for about 5 years afterwards, I went down and found some of those crumbs in a can down there. Mary, they were just as nice as they were the...
No kidding,
Yeah.
5 years later.
We didn't use them, it was just a cup full in bottom can. But
Must be those
Mary-
preservatives we put in it.
Yeah, you didn't.
No, we didn't put any preservatives in. So you retired to a bakery in your home, and that went on until, when did you finally retire completely? Not too long ago, a few years ago.
I think in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember just when, but also said around the
And you
70s.
still make cakes for people occasionally, but
Oh,
then you
yes,
don't do it
family,
anymore.
yeah.
Just for family occasionally. Now, you had a big family, and I know that we all had chores too, and as we were raised, we did work around the house and helped where we could. And What were Christmases and holidays like in your family with 10 children?
Well, the worst Christmas I ever had here, and we live.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to talk?
Go ahead.
And Luther was sick, and he was up at the hospital in the tenant's ward, and I baked bread for 10 cents a loaf to get the girls a pocketbook, a little doll, and the boys a little truck. So I had to do it gradually as I got the money, and I put it in the trunk in the boys' room, but I turned the trunk around, you couldn't lock it. And that Louis run through that house, and oh, he was out of bed early in the mornings on Sunday morning, and he opened that
Just
trunk.
a little fella. He didn't know any better.
No, he was only, 3, 4 years
Yeah.
old. He hollered, "Kids, look at your Christmas presents." Oh, my heart was broke. I'll tell
I
you.
can remember him telling us to come look. Of course, we were
Oh,
excited
yeah.
to see we had Christmas presents.
That was a Christmas.
But Christmas was tough sometimes, wasn't it? During the Depression, you and Dad, I know Dad had a job all during the Depression.
We never felt the Depression where food is concerned or anything, because we had just enough to keep, plenty to keep us going.
And we always had a garden that you can.
Yeah. That was all garden out there.
And we had a garden on Waller Street.
That's
I remember
right,
picking
big one.
beans by the bushel.
That's right, we canned them too. And McLennan's, my gracious, we had a beautiful garden there. That was where the greenhouse used to raise their early stuff. And they tore it down. And when I moved there, Arthur said, "Well, Mildred, I'm going to let you have that. That's good, rich ground." And oh, boy, did it ever bear. I canned 45 quarts of pickles one time off of there.
My goodness.
45 quarts of pickles.
Well, you and the McLennans kept friends over the years, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Anybody goes up there for flowers, Art gets all the old pictures out and shows them, Well, Mildred, Angie delivered Mildred,
Oh, did she?
Oh, yes, and that's how she's got named Mildred Angie.
Oh,
She's
because
named
she was
after her.
delivered by Angie McLennan.
Oh, yeah. Well, she wasn't, I don't think she was married then. I think they married afterwards. But Arthur lived there at the pillared porch.
Now, let's just go back a bit, because I don't think we defined where all the children were born. Foster was born at
Foster and
Brock's.
Bernie out to Brock's.
And then Mildred.
And you and Evie were born at McLennan's. Then Louis was born back out in the country where we lived out there. Then we came back into the city, and the rest of the kids were born down there, other than the hospital, the last.
Shirley was born at 64 Moeller Street.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Then
Bobby was born in the hospital, and so
well, the
was,
baby I lost, that's why I went to the hospital,
Yes.
yeah.
and then Jimmy and Elsa were born at
Hospital.
General Hospital, Binghamton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we'll go back to Christmas again. I wanted to get that in about where the children were born. Did you have live trees and go out and cut it yourself? How did you get your Christmas trees?
They went up in the woods above us and cut them.
And just help
Yeah.
themselves to something up on the state
Oh,
land?
Yeah. You could go any place and cut trees in those days. A lot of people had land, but let you go on them,
And then as the children grew and got married, it got pretty hectic here at Christmas time, didn't it? We used to all come home, I remember.
Yeah. I think they've been as high as, 60 here
I think
for
so.
different times for things.
Yeah. And now your family, of course, is all married and grown, and you have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Do you know how many grandchildren you have? Have you got them
35
counted up?
living, 35
35
living
are
and 2
living.
dead.
2 have died.
Yeah, Eric and then,
Carol, Foster's the first
one, yeah.
one was died as a very young child.
yeah, 6 months
And
old.
Eric died at
He was what?
17,
I
16,
think
17.
so. 16, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that was Bob's boy.
Boy.
And Foster's daughter Carol is dead.
Mhm, mhm.
And then you have a few great-grandchildren too. How
I
many
think-
do you have to
I think
date?
when the next 4 comes, we're going to have 43 great-grandchildren.
43.
I think
And
they
that means
counted
there
up.
are 4 on the way.
I think they added up the other day that there's going to be 4 more. And Tracy's going to have one, Mark's wife.
Oh, no, I didn't
Oh,
know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that'll be 3 for them.
Yeah, and I think there's Bonnie and Becky and Judy
Judy is going to
and
have one.
Tracy. There's 4 more coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you'll have 43 great-grandchildren and 35 grandchildren.
Yeah.
And then your 10 children, of course, are still living.
Yeah, that's right.
So that adds up to quite a crew, doesn't it?
That sure does.
That looks like 88 to me. We need a hall when we get together anymore, don't we?
You never get
Can't
them
do
all.
it in anybody's
You'd
home.
never get them all together again.
Now, you have a birthday coming up February 10th, and you will be, how old?
83.
83 years old. Still going strong.
Well, I hope so.
Well, I think we've just about gone through. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this tape that you think we've left out or that might be of
I'm
interest?
thankful to be alive and that the good Lord looks after me the way He does and gives me the strength to carry on. I have a home and roof over my head. I've got a lot to be thankful for. My kids are pretty well around here, give me a lot of help.
So we'll close this tape now, and we'll add a few pictures onto the end of the home here now, what it looked like before and what it looks like now, and maybe a little bit of video about some of the places you lived before you came here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mary.
Bye.
Bob, thank you, and Francis, thank you. Oh, that would. Now, this is the house we bought in 1945, and it's changed a lot now because we have stairs coming down here, and there was a big window which isn't there anymore. This was an old shed, and now there's a big window there. What else should I think?
Your kitchen window.
And there's my kitchen window. There's a bedroom window. This was my bedroom here.
Yeah, and the porch is all
Yeah,
open.
they're still open. And then my
The
son
double
Foster had the attic all built into an apartment, so it was well occupied. That house was. There's the garage.
And
Now-
see how high they piled all the sand. Oh,
it's
that's
just
snow.
snow. Bob, that's snow.
Okay.
And then we don't have this no more there either. That's
No,
all
that's
new
your kitchen
That's a
now.
new kitchen, yeah. Yep, there she is.
Okay, and then we'll see what it looks like today. You saw the picture, photograph. Now here's some more footage. Same house. Porch is enclosed, front porch. Stairway coming out of that bay window that was there. And there's the shed. It's all enclosed, now part of the kitchen. Place where the interview took place. The garage. A little different shot. There's the kitchen. Another stairway going up the outside to the second floor. This is front view. Porches are still enclosed on the front also, as they were on the side. Fire escape been added to the third floor. That's 300 Robinson Street.